Imagine 128 years ago, you were being called to school. You were gonna take your classes in here, and that day and time of period, your tablet was a chalkboard. Try to imagine no air conditioning. Try to imagine very little heat. And when we open it up, you're gonna get a good feel for what school was probably like, if you can imagine. Mom and Dad working in the groves and you attending school here. I want to welcome you. I want to welcome each and every one of you. I hope you can hear me okay. Very happy to have some of my council members join me today. Mr. John Armstrong, whose grandfather lived in this home, his grandparents. His parents donated the property that we are on and the building, and it was then restored, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that story. Would you please rise?
I'd like to invite all the children from Windermere Elementary and any other students that happen to be in the audience to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we're very honored to have with us the Mustang Sound from Windermere Elementary School, who will sing our Star Spangled Banner. This time I'd like to ask Pastor Emeritus Roger Seidner to lead us in our invocation. We've tried to bring as many people back who have a connection to this building and to this place. And Pastor Seidner's father attended this school.
Good morning. It's good that we could gather here. This is the fruition of the work of many dedicated and conscientious citizens of Windermere who have brought us to this place, to a restored building that was built, so far as we can determine, before 1887. That's the first record of it that we have. But at some point in time it came on the scene and is probably the oldest existing school building in Orange County, and certainly the oldest existing building in the town of Windermere. But we're here this morning not just to dedicate and honor a building. We recognize the lives that have gone before us who studied here. Someone has wisely said that a child's education begins some 50 years before its grandparents are born. There are probably very few of us remaining who had a parent who attended here. A few perhaps. But people were studying here over 100 years ago, under conditions that Gary has outlined, without electricity, without running water, without automobiles, without television, without radio, without an iPod or a means of instant communication that we have now. And yet, in the midst of that primitive lifestyle, as we would imagine it today, they achieved and learned and made it possible for us to arrive at this point in time. We have a deep legacy. You may have come into the community in recent years, You may have no heritage that dates back to this building. Yet somewhere in your lifespan and in your forebears' lifespan, there was a little building like this one, where you had grandparents or great-grandparents or even beyond who studied and learned and made it possible in different ways for each one of us to enjoy the life that we have now. For that we should be most grateful. And so in just dedicating a building, we are going beyond that. We're reaching back into the past and recognize that we are all part of those who preceded us. We recognize that and honor it. Faith is very subjective, and each one of us brings a different faith in our own mind to this gathering. So it ill behooves one person to offer a prayer on behalf of everyone. It becomes a common responsibility. So we're gathered here to remember, to pause, and to give thanks for our heritage. With that comes an accountability and a responsibility. So I'm going to ask that we bow our heads together for just a moment, and in silence each one of us may meditate, pray, reflect. Whatever it is in your life that turns you to introspection, we ask that you engage as we remember our heritage and give thanks for those that have gone before us. And after a moment of silence, we'll conclude. Gathered together, we recognize we are members one of another and have a common responsibility. We are not alone. As we reach out and touch those around us, we recognize that we share. And in a special way, we give thanks this day for those that have gone before us, for what we have gained from those before us. Help us to recognize the responsibility and the accountability that we have in our heritage. Guide us and strengthen us in the lives that follow us, to the end that we might lift the concern for all humanity, that we might turn from self-serving to self-giving, and so in the process, in the fullness of time, we might come to recognize and realize peace and justice in our land and throughout the world. Let it begin with us, and let us begin with responsible actions in our own lives. So be it. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I also want to make sure that everybody notes our very special thanks to our donors and volunteers in the program. Without their work, we would not have been successful. And I think, as the Windermere Observer said, this building is now back to its former glory. With that being said, I also want to take a moment and thank Kathleen Clare for her contributions and the Windermere Tree Board.
This schoolhouse does symbolize our heritage, and as pointed out by the pastor and pointed out by Mayor Brune, it harkens back to a simpler time in our history. We've come so very, very far. It struck me this morning in thinking about what I would say in the last 125 years or so since this building was first dedicated back in 1887. This community has played a tremendous role in the growth of our county. In fact, one of the things that may interest you as a very well-known Windermere family that I'm sure all of you know, the Roper family. Mr. W.C. Roper was actually one of the first members of the Board of Education, or the predecessor to the school board here in Orange County. In fact, he was one of 4 founding members. So this community has a particular place in the legacy of free public education.
Thank you, Mayor Bruin. I am delighted to be here as well for this very special occasion. Certainly, I think it says something about the town of Windermere. It says something about Orange County, actually. I want to especially commend the Historical Preservation Board for your work on this beautiful building and its preservation. Back then, 1887, Little Schoolhouse served as a social meeting place, as the election office, meeting room for the church, and the Windermere Board of Trade. So the schoolhouse was a center of the community. Now, teachers in those schools had about 15 by 21 feet of space to teach all of those students. Differentiated instruction, I'm sure, since it was kindergarten through 12th grade. They also probably just had chalkboards and paper and pencil. Our brilliant students today have digital equipment at their fingertips. And I understand, Mayor Bruin, that you have coined the term, "This place matters." It mattered back in 1887. It matters today. We don't ever want our children to forget their heritage. Congratulations, commendations, and thank you for letting me be a part.
Well, good morning. Without the past, we can't have the future. And without treasuring that past, we really can't set a legacy. And I want to talk about legacy, especially to you all. First of all, I want to tell you that I started my morning at 6:30, which is not my favorite hour, at Olympia. Because I am a mom of my youngest, who will be graduating, who was a Mustang, who was a Gotha Grizzly, and is now a Titan. And that is part of the legacy. That's part of what started right here in this very building. This building that had, as you heard, really our kindergarten through 12th grade has grown into 34 schools in West Orange County. It is an amazing, amazing place with where we live, that we get to appreciate the past, live in the present, but plan for the future. When I came to West Orange County, I felt like I was coming home. And one of the gentlemen I met was Mr. Carl Patterson. Does anybody know who Mr. Patterson was? Yeah. And I could have sat with him for hours and hours and hours and talking about the book that he planned and he wrote, where he helped to preserve the history of this great community. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for leaving this legacy and another treasure, not only for our students, but for our community. And thank you for the support that you give to our students as they grow and become our future leaders. Have a wonderful morning.
All of our members to stand so we can recognize you and thank you for your hard work. At this point in time, I would like to invite Chairperson Ms. Hannah Amar, Windermere Historical Preservation Board, to say a few words.
Hello, and thank you for being here. Many people to thank. This is just a partial list, but there are some people that we really felt needed to be recognized. Our Historic Board Committee, which is Teresa Myers, Joan Foglia, John Fisher, Jackie Rapport, Mary Frances Howard, Amy Dubois. I'd like to thank Dr. Don Green, who was our historian. He consulted with us quite a bit on the history. Our council liaison, John Armstrong, whose family actually donated this property to the town of Windermere years ago. Our very dedicated Mayor, Gary Bruin. Our wonderful town manager, Robert Smith, who has been out here himself sweating and helping to restore the landscape. Windermere Town Council, Jim O'Brien, Richard Gonzalez, John Armstrong, Molly Rose, and Bob McKinley. The Windermere Tree Board, who restored the historic orange grove. They helped with all the trees. They did a lot of the planting of the camellias around the perimeter. The Windermere Garden Club, they had countless hours of weed pulling and planning and planting the beautiful things that you see around the landscape. Windermere Prep. They had a lot of students come and donate their time to also help with weeds and digging and mulching. Windermere Parks and Rec Committee, they donated funds early on. Nearland Gardens, they donated 100 amaryllis that you see planted around. I'd like to thank Angela Withers and Stephen Withers, Vicki Hurst, Susan Carter, John Thurman, and Ashley Interiors for their restoration work, and he donated a number of materials that are on the inside. Judy Rubin and CSS Restoration for restoring all the windows and doors. The Chase Family Groves, Winter Garden Heritage Museum for the citrus labels. Kathleen Clare and the Wickening family for the 1880s stove, the old school books and alphabet plaques that you'll see hanging inside. George Polker for generously making the orange crates that you'll see in the interior that the students sat on at the time. He actually used some reclaimed wood from the Cal Palmer house that was recently knocked down. Tom Stroop, Pat Coleman, Judy Black, Windermere Wine and Dine, whose financial help made much of this possible. C.T. Allen, who founded the Windermere Wine and Dine. And thank you to the town of Windermere, who restored my belief that community spirit is still alive in some places in America. And there's one individual who deserves very special recognition. She, very much like the peddler in the Stone Soup story, got everything started in the first place. She has donated her own money to save it from being moved. She donated countless hours of volunteering, wrote the grant for the historic marker, did all of the research. She is really the chair of this committee, not me. She also chairs the tree board. None of this would have happened without her. Teresa Myers, thank you for all you have done. You are an irreplaceable asset to our town. Have fun exploring. You're going back to a time when the Civil War would have just ended. Wyatt Earp and Buffalo Bill were still roaming the earth. And the Orange County School Board wasn't around at the time, but if they had been, they would have been called the Mosquito County Public Schools. So anyway, have a good time. Thank you so much for being here.
I have no one left to thank. With that being said, I'd like to introduce Ms. Teresa Myers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa Schretzman Myers, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history here today. This is actually school number 75 for Orange County, and you'll see the records in the school that we were able to find at the Orange County Regional History Center sitting on the school teacher's desk, along with a superintendent's letter calling everybody to a meeting to discuss salaries, and you'll see the salaries listed on the school teacher's desk as well. Our teacher was paid about $20 a month to teach 22 students. And there were two teachers. We had Mip Ellie Davis, who was the male teacher, probably the older gentleman here in the mustache. And then we had Maud Adams, who I think is the oldest lady here in the picture. And then, of course, we have one student that we know for sure, the little girl with the arrow over her head. And that's little Sarah Griffin, later Sarah Griffin Sheen. And if you just look around you, you're at the National Register Historic Site. So when you ask the question, why does this place matter? You just have to look around you. You know that it was the earliest agricultural settlement because there's the historic orange grove right there next to you that's been restored, but some of the original trees are there. And you smell the orange blossoms waft over every year as they promulgate, and they still make those beautiful oranges. And we know that the citrus groves were once from the Chase family. Right there are the Chase Isleworth Grove workers where they came from. That's now Isleworth. But that's where the Grove workers' families and a few of the farms from the north and the west came. We know the enrollment from 1887 here was 12 to 23 students, and we know it was K through 12. If you look in the picture, you'll still see the oak tree. That's the oak trees that are still here, and the straight pines. All those straight pines in the back with that Florida sun in the background are the longleaf pines that were harvested to build the house by local carpenters and local tradesmen. And if you look carefully, you'll see the wagon wheels in the back. See the wagon wheels? That's how they got here, horse and buggy, or you walked. In the original tablet, here it is. That tablet that you take for granted today, the technology, the smart tablets, these were the first tablets where the children used chalk and tablets to practice their sums and to practice their spelling words with chalk. You'll see the little children. This is probably the youngest right here. She's sitting on the teacher's lap. and the oldest is a high school student, all the way down to middle school and kindergarten. So these teachers had a big task. They had to teach all grade levels in one room, all together. And you can imagine, I'm sure some of the older students probably mentored some of the younger students, as they do in some of our multi-age classes today, or as they used to at the Windermere school where we had a multi-age class. It's probably where Windermere got its multi-age tradition, because of our one-room schoolhouse. So we talk about the other history that happened here. Why is this significant to the United States, to Florida, and Windermere? We know that it was school number 75, and the name of it was then Schoolhouse Lake. And you'll see the record on the teacher's desk from Orange County that says Schoolhouse Lake number 75. And then it changes its name to Windermere in 1890. And those records are in there too. And we know that it provided the first facility for schooling of the town, where children who later became citizens and leaders of the community. They were from this small little 12-block town of Windermere. United States President Benjamin Harrison issued a land grant homestead certificate number 3337, and that was given to Jesse Greaves in 1891 for what is now the present town of Windermere, where the school presently presides. So we know it served the religious needs. It was the first Sunday school for Windermere Union Church, central meeting place for the area for the women's club. It was the first election hall, the first town hall, the first meeting place. So it basically facilitated social interaction and civic activity. Everything happened here. All the town's history happened here. The schoolhouse is also associated with the family of Samuel Sevier, and you'll see his name. Well, no, you won't. Well, it says, no. Anyway, Samuel Sevier, S.S. Griffin, and his wife and children, who were sole owners of the town. Griffin and his wife had purchased the town between 1907 and 1910 through tax certificates. When his son Lawrence Griffin owned the earliest sawmill in Windermere and provided the wood for the 1887 schoolhouse. He was also L.J. Griffin, one of our first school superintendents. And you'll see his name in there on the certificates and the documents. The schoolhouse is associated with Great Floridians, 2000, Dr. John Howard Johnson, whose name is on the building. He was a prominent physician and developer, and Nellie A. Grice, whose name is on the building, one of Windermere's first town clerks. Cal Palmer went to Sam Sevier and bought, in 1910, this property for $10,000, and bought what is now the whole town of Windermere, plus the outlying areas to the east and north, about 2,000 acres in all. And after purchasing the entire town of Windermere from Samuel Sevier, Griffin, Dr. John Howard Johnson, and Calvin Palmer, along with their wives, formed Windermere Improvement Company to develop and market their properties in Windermere. And John Cal Palmer, a carpenter, builder, and developer, was also Windermere's first postmaster in August of 1911. And John Thurman's little building, his little shop, is the Cal Palmer Post Office, that little white shop right on Brick Lane next to the town hall. An Orange County Courthouse official record search of the historic schoolhouse shows the succession of ownership of the property from the Windermere Improvement Company and Cal Palmer to present day. And the Orange County official records show the warranty deed from Cal Palmer to Lloyd and Minnie E. Armstrong, John Armstrong's family, who finally deeded the house to the town of Windermere as a National Register Historic Site. So you just follow the history. And if you look at the root of the word history, it comes from Old Latin and Old Greek, which means to inquire, to ask, to inquire about information. So think about that. When you think about why this place matters, it's all here for you to see. The Kuntis, right here, these little plants, were how they made their bread and their biscuits. They ground the root of the Kunti up to make their bread and their biscuits. They survived off of oranges and the crops they grew in the back. The WPA privies in the back, they didn't have running water. You used the privy, and you had a well. Now the hand well's behind us here, but it's covered, and we still have to restore the hand well. And there's still more work to be done. We have to fix the pileated woodpecker holes in the siding on the side. But these are all things that we have to raise more money for. So we're asking you for your support today to help and keep joining us in doing the restoration work that needs to be completed on the well and the wood and the siding. There's lots more work to be done. But we thank you for being here today, for helping us restore the school. It's been a huge community effort, and for making the This Place Matters campaign come to fruition with this beautiful site. So enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. At this point in time, we're going to make it official. I would like to ask all of our speakers to join us at the history marker, along with all my members of the Historic Preservation Board and council members as we unveil it. Please don't leave. Come back because we're going to have one more song from the Mustang Sound, and I have some other information to share. So if you would join me at the historical marker. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So it's a Florida Heritage Site, sponsored by the Windermere Historical Preservation Board, Windermere Garden Club, Windermere Parks and Recreation, Mary Frances Fisher Howard and family, John and Dina Armstrong, Mary Gary and Kay Brune, and the Florida Department of State. So this is both a National Register Historic Site and a Florida Heritage Site. So thank you everybody for making this day possible. And the history's on the front and the back.
All right, at this time, I would like to just provide just some closing remarks, and that's just thanking all of you for being a part of this. Feel free to join in.